Nearing 50 days of lockdown and I now know things will never be the same. What worries me most is the shift in my attitude. My positive "we can beat this" mantra has disappeared. My prevailing mantra swing from the angry, "those idiots," to the piercing loneliness of, "I will die alone." Touch, a simple hug, remains longed for, needed the way a newborn and mother seek bonding, the way a worn wooden deck absorbs sealer to keep it from falling apart. I wonder how much more the darkness which slaps me hourly with numbers and surrounds me in a pool of loneliness, shakes me with a fear of the unknown, will weaken me and others. What will happen to humankind? Today I wrote a comment on Facebook. Rereading it later, it showed a clue to the future. I know from my work as a sociologist this post signaled the outset of humanity's adieu. Cleaning the kitchen led to pacing until my hair crawls with an imaginary virus. Overshowering is a problem too, I remind myself. But I take my second shower, anyway. This post appears an important clue for future analysis. April 17, 2020, thanks for the Facebook pictures. Spring covered my wood in buds and powdered it in a rare April snow. Your wood, though across the Atlantic, looks greener than mine. It makes me optimistic the apocalyptic cycle will not start here in the United States. We doubled our deaths in 1 week, and the cases tripled. I hope others understand this virus is like a car accident, but this accident causes 2 more accidents and then each of those cause 2 more accidents, and those 2 cause 2 more, unceasing like a branch burgeoning other branches from limbs to twigs. Eventually the highway, then the county roads will become impassable. Our first death was only a month ago in our county. Today, in our town, we have 19 deaths with 271 cases, up 40 from yesterday, each infecting 2 others. The larger cities first infected showed us how the numbers double daily. Across our country, we have 699,032 cases and 25,987 deaths. It won't be too long. Yet the election seems more important than the solution. We are on the rise. After watching New York and LA come so close to collapse, I wonder how my small, less powerful community will do. It will be months before lockdown lifts. Every day seems surreal and longer. I don't remember snow this late. I'm feeding the chipmunks, robins, and baby bunnies Cheerios. It's all I got. They look as stunned as I feel. Through windows, I survey my subdivision. I can't help but wonder who will die, who is sick, and if my cough is allergies. I know the odds are small, but amid this sparkling white, the black asphalt road becomes the arm of the plague weaving through, curving to capture me. Move on by, I whisper. The guilt pricks my heart. April 17, 2020, second entry, 1 p.m. Central Time. Asymptomatic became the demon. I needed human touch and connection. I wanted to heal others. But others were the problem, the disease. How could I trust the others? Those who believed this wasn't dangerous and a hoax were just as capable of killing me as those who tested and worked to solve this virus. Any human was dangerous. No matter how much I needed human connection, I must isolate myself. As the supply chain continues to weaken and scarcity and illness climb, I know from my training what would happen next. I must act. My radio flyer wagon bounced over the dirt path of the wood only a few blocks from my subdivision home. Garden tools, shovels, and supplies clanked and shifted as I tugged them off the path toward the hill. The plan in my head to dig into the side of the hill and create a hidden garden area rattled in my brain and bounced back and forth from insane to proactive sensibility. My gut ached, more out of fear than hunger. This would be the fallout place in case the world fell apart. If this government gets a handle on this virus, then I would have gotten exercise and a garden I could share to relieve some of my guilt. However, if, as I suspected, the government falls into bickering versus helping, I'd shelter myself here. There would be no electricity, but protection from the other people ranked higher in priority. All the clues were right there. This is how an apocalypse begins: we separate for the other, we blame the other, we forget to solve and instead protect our own asses. With each shovel of earth removed from the hill, I knew I was creating an apocalyptic future. But my memory replayed the sight of empty toilet paper shelves in the once greatest country in the world, and I knew the fear of the unknown had taken control. My guilt ran deep, but still, I shoveled, turning the out-of-season snow black with misplaced dirt. I subsided my guilt with the words, "This is what I must do. This is the smart move for me. For my family." I swallowed hard, shaking the dirt from me as my empty radio flyer, free of its now hidden tools, rolled onto clacking a repeating rhythm. Save yourself, the thumping repeated as the wheels rolled over the cracks in the sidewalk. I sat with my most perishable meal and watched the news to end the day. Sleep fell hard but restless. April 17, 2021, 4 a.m. Central Time, Journal Entry 543 Today, I move into the hill. It's sturdy and the weather will change in a few weeks, I hope. But after reopening the workforce before testing, the virus spread like wildfire. The economy faltered when the president refused to leave power after his defeat. Factions formed. The divisions exploded between the others. Tomorrow the military was doing testing. Testing now meant if you had a past of disagreeing with the new government, you were taken to a virus internment camp for your protection. I didn't know how long I could survive on my own in this new world, but I knew the others, whichever side they were on, would not allow me freedom. I would be better out of their reach. I gathered the last of my books, my matches, my seeds went into the wood. Invisible to the world and the virus. My only regret was I didn't change minds sooner. This story contains themes or mentions of mental health issues. A man with a city unto himself, walking at first, turning into a jog, beside the calm waters of the river, smiling as the pain kept him from his thoughts. Stopped for a moment. The cold removing the feeling in his fingers and the feeling in his chest and the thoughts in his mind. Footsteps following behind. Cars rumbled across. Lights of the city flickered. The city moving toward night and Adam clenching his hand and gripping nothing and gripping fleeting seconds. How different it felt to be alone now that he was gone. Gone. The brother who had stood next to him at the graduation ceremonies, celebrated his promotions, and stood next to him at the aisle, first to answer the phone with the news of his child, first to ask him to come home when Dad got sick. The footsteps gaining closer. The sound of angry heels striking the earth behind him, tear-filled eyes rushing into the cold. He ran. Ran away from the times Adam felt like he had failed his brother. Could he have done more? Well, you could have always done more, and that's what led us to this point, and you ignored the warning signs because you had to take a call or you had to go on a trip, and if you had just been there perhaps things could have turned out differently. The walkway across the river leading to statues of angels. But Charles wouldn't be among them. Couldn't be among them. Yes, even though I could have done more as a brother, doesn't Charles deserve some responsibility? Deserve some blame? He's the one that made those decisions and not me, so why am I the one that feels guilty? If Charles was with God, well, that question has been answered already. Did Charles do enough? The times he watched over your daughter when you told your wife you were gone but you were in an old hotel not a mile from your away house. Those times. Did you even deserve that, brother? What about all those times he took Dad to the hospital? But that was too much for Charles. Seeing Dad die. Yes, Charles did enough, regardless of the way he went out. Lungs burning. His mind not in the present moment. And no matter how you wish, there are no do-overs. The thoughts bringing Adam to his knees. He stopped and knelt and wept beneath the statues of angels. No, Adam, there are no do-overs. Jumped in. Feeling himself sink. The water filling his mouth. But no, he wouldn't end like this. Just wanted to know what it felt like. To be on that side of desperation. In the cold and in the dark and alone, drowning. Is this what Charles felt? Fighting the urge to come out of the water. Hands and fingers growing numb. His body cold, his mind, and his thoughts like a heavy stone, bringing him closer to the darkness of which no one leaves. And a part of him embracing the cold, embracing the invisible status adopted in the lake. For beneath the lake he could hide. And there would be no judgment, and in the cold there would be no pain. Looking up to the surface. A willful prisoner to the cold and to the darkness. Sinking further. The cold like chains around his hands and chains around ankles. Bounded himself in the shivery dark water. Stopped moving. Not feeling the cold anymore. Thoughts slowing, pausing. Remembering Charles as he had pulled him out of a lake when they were kids. And Charles was much bigger to him back then, pulling him out with ease, wiping him off with a towel, not telling Mom and Dad what had happened. Raised his hand again. Willing an open hand, but feeling himself fall. The water taking him somewhere else and burying his cold body, but his hands still outstretched. But this time there would be no one to save him. And who had chased him into the water? I guess that wouldn't matter now. An investigation perhaps, but what does that matter to my family? If I am gone, then I am gone. And if life there are no do-overs. His hand fishing for something. Shaking his legs but knowing his legs aren't moving. And if he screamed the water would fill in his mouth. How long had he been underneath he would never know. How long before hypothermia sets in? Perhaps someone would see his clothes. Think he was in the water. Knowing that thought would only torture to him. There is no exit. This ends only one way. Closing his eyes. Remembering what his brother had whispered in his ear. His mouth now repeated that whisper. And he felt a hand clench his. And how this could be possible. For he imagined the angels coming down to save. But the hand felt familiar, but the burdens had sunken him like a stone down so far, how someone could have rescued him he didn't know. Getting out of the water. Putting his clothes back. Heading back on the walkway. Beneath the angels. Stood there. Exposed to the cold. Beneath the gaze of angels. This is who I am, he thought. Broken. There is not much that matters now. On the train the next day. And at home his wife and kids. Feeling perhaps guilty about enjoying them because Adam was here in this world and Charles was not. Getting out of the train station and deciding not to go home. Drove instead to a place that he knew Charles would go if he were still here. A place that Adam wished he had went more before Charles had been murdered. And Charles had always tried to talk to him about it, but it had never gone anywhere. Life had gotten in the way and Adam had left it happen and he had pushed Charles away. Opening the wide and transparent doors. The door looking heavy but feeling light. Dark at first, as all churches were, and if you looked down you couldn't see your feet. But ahead, the tabernacle and the cross and the lights. Sat in the last pew. Staring at the cross. Looking at the crucified hand and thinking of Charles's hand. And yes, we are all broken, Adam thought. And Adam knelt. We are all broken, indeed, and Charles felt the calm waters of the lake. The arms of Jesus outstretched, like an invitation. Are you there, God? It's me. Daniela Dean screams a muffled plea beneath her taped mouth. Tears flow from her eyes. She hasn't eaten in days, and she doesn't know where she is or why he chose her. There were others that night he could have taken. Her best friend had been by her side. She recalls the fireworks and the eerie feeling she had just before he took her. The devil is near. Her cries are muted. Please, God. Oh, please. Rays of light through the floorboard cracks catch dusty specks that cloud her vision in a yellow-green haze. She hears the thud of his boots cease, as he stands over her. There's the click of a lock before the latch opens. Daniela can see the outline of a blackened figure. She flinches when something like a sponge bounces off her face and lands in the shadows. Bread. Eat, orders a deep voice. Daniela is chained by the feet. Go on now. Get your food. A flood of fear washes over her as he stares. No, no, no. The slamming of the latch door cuts all light, faces float past, blank and smooth as cream. The crowd assembles toward the edge of a field. The devil is among them. A sea of country people peer into the dark for some midnight contest to begin. A light sputters off into the field, and a purple-tailed rocket skitters off high above their upturned faces. It bursts and sprays. Lit glycerin flares across the night and trails down the sky in loose ribbons of hot spectra that burn into nothing. Another goes up, a wishing sound fishtails aloft. The bloom of its opening shares shadows and images of the rocket that had gone before. There are puffs of black smoke, and ashy trails arc out and down like a vast dark Medusa squatting in the sky. The light bloom outlines two men in the field who crouch over a crate of fireworks like bridge assassins. A young girl with full lips and wide eyes is among them. Daniela's hair smells of sweet soap, a woman-child beyond her years wrapped below the sulfur glow and pitched light of some medieval fun fair. A lean skyline candle skewers the black pools in her eyes. Her fingers are clutched with tension and excitement. In the flood of lights and colors, she sees the man watching her, and she nervously edges closer to the girl by her side. Her country denim overalls are fastened by glistening metallic straps. Daniela brushes her hair quickly with two fingers and cautions her best friend not to point his way. When she glances again in his direction, he has disappeared somewhere in the firelights. The devil talks to himself. His shuffling boot prints lay out the plans of lesser life, where mice or foxes have gone hunting in the night. He wears the underclothes and garments of his female victims. He appears as a gothic doll in ill-fitting clothes. His gleeful mouth floats bright and detached in the white landscape. His tracks come from a mysterious cave with blood-red mud as if the snow had cauterized his feet, leaving dry prints in the frozen ground. Soon, fall spring will come again with a warm wind, and the snow will melt off into patches of gray ice among the wet leaves. Bats begin to stir somewhere in the deep cave during his macabre rituals. He sees them come through the tunnel and ascends through the hole overhead. They flutter wildly through the smoke and ash of soulful wafts rising from Hades. When they are gone, he watches the hordes of cold stars sprawled across the smoke hall and wonders what stuff they are made of. God, if you're there, have mercy on my child and show me the way. Carson Dean, Daniela's father, crosses the road and follows the stream towards the thin, narrow gorge. It rushes off into the darkness before him and descends from pool to pool in stone cups. He follows the course for perhaps a mile down all its turnings and through narrows that stretch him sideways. He advances sideways, like a fencer, through a tunnel that brings him to his belly until he reaches an opening where he can stand again. He observes the underworld of a dark and cold cave and can't bear the smell. Hell on earth, he thinks to himself. Carson rushes to an opening where tiny doilies of snow settle and perish on the crossed arms of his coat. He watches the silent land below him grow dim in gray snowfall. After a while, he takes up his shotgun and crosses the ridge to where he can still see the road. It takes him the better part of the morning to cross the ridge where God leads him. The snow is gray against the sky and soft on his lashes. It falls without a sound. Carson makes his way down a slope towards what now appears to be some sort of plantation hidden in the monochrome tint before dusk. "Where are you, you bastard?" Carson asks both God and man. From about a half-mile out, he sees the devil coming from a house for wood. He crosses into a barn and then disappears aimlessly in the woods. Carson moves with haste and crouches behind the barn, listening. He hears the chunk of an axe dampened by the wind and trees. He advances through the barn, and it is empty. Even the lofts are bare of hay. Carson stands in a bay door and looks down at the fallen snow towards the gray shape of a smoking shack. He crosses through an adjacent chicken coop, and a few white hens eye him nervously through their cubby nests on the far wall. He patiently waits for the devil to return. Carson kicks in the door. The devil is shirtless, and his back is covered in stripe-like scars that spill down his spine. "Turn around," Carson says. "I want to see you." Daniela lies below somewhere between a nightmare and exhaustion when she hears her father's voice. Carson gasps when he observes the spectacle face to face. He's painted in makeup smears, bare-chested and hairy, adorning Daniela's torn bloody overalls. He smiles with cracked and chapped red-painted lips. "God, what are you?" The devil remains silent. When he pulls the trigger, Carson doesn't even flinch, unloading the buckshot into the throat of his adversary. Daniela kicks and screams as blood leaks through the floor and drips onto her naked flesh. "Honey." "Daniela. Hold on, hold on. Daddy's here." Carson moves swiftly and stands over the devil. Still intact and drenched with eyeshadow, his right eye looks up at Carson. He tries to speak from a red bubbling mouth, but he cannot utter a sound. Daniela frantically kicks at the locked hatch door. Carson tries to stomp through the floorboards but they won't break. Unable to speak, the devil points to a table where the key is, and Carson instantly snatches it. With trembling hands, he unlocks the hatch and opens the door to the horror of his daughter lying there in her own filth. "Daddy's right here, honey." Carson drags the devil's body out of the way, blankets his daughter, and gently sets her in the corner. His heart thumps with rage, and he turns, reloads the shotgun, and unloads one final shot.